Okay. So once again, good morning, everyone. Today we are going to discuss about the work group and the domain environment. So as soon as you install a new computer or a new server, by default that computer will be there in the work group. And that work group, we will not keep the computers in the work group, but as soon as we are done with all the post build activities, we will domain join that computer or a server, and then we will give to the onboarding or monitoring. Okay, now let us understand what is work group and what is the difference between work group and the domain. See, this work group means, as the name itself tells, it is a group of computers at your workplace. And all the computers are interconnected via network. Okay, compute if there are 5 computers, computer 1 can talk to the remaining 4 computers. Similarly, all the other 4 computers can talk to each other among 5. Okay, and one more classical example. See, you have a laptop at your home, and that laptop has got D drive, E drive, everything, and that laptop is used by multiple peoples. Maybe you are also using the computer, your brother and your sister is also using the same computer. Okay, so what happens, to log into the computer, you may have a different usernames. Maybe Narendra logs in with Narendra's email ID or user account. His brother and sister is also having a separate account created, and they will also use the same account to log into the computer. But once they log in, they everybody see the data of others. See, if Narendra logs in, and he can see the D drive and E drive, and he can see what all data his brother and sister stored there. That means here no security. Correct, but in case of domain it is not like that. And before I move to the domain, in the work group, what happens, the user accounts, say for example you have a computer here, so in the computer only will create the user account, maybe user 1, user 2. Okay, so we call this as local users. Yesterday, if you remember, I have created a user account by going to the run, from there lusrmgr.msc, local user manager.msc, and then I went to user and created a user called admin, if you remember, and one more ID Manju I created. So these user call it as local users. So workgroup systems, they does not exhibit any kind of centralized thing. They are decentralized, means you have to create the user in the computer, the local computer, and there is no restrictions. Okay, so there is no security. One more example. Say for example, if you normally go to a browsing center, okay, the browsing center person will be sitting in this computer, and you have around 5 computers here. Okay, let us take 3. And even if you are browsing here, and if you tell something, sir, I wanted to take a printout, he will tell, sir, please keep it in somewhere in the D drive. But that person can, by sitting in this computer only, he can access that computer. That means that person can access all the computers, and he can access all the data of the user whoever use the computer. That means there is no security. Okay, so this is what work group means, and it will only work when you have a smaller organization, kind of 5 users, 10 users, or 20 users. But when your users and the computers and the resources are more, like 100, 200, 1000 lakhs together, then the best way is to keep it, the servers in the domain. Okay, keep the users in the domain. Now, you understood work group means a small group of computers which are interconnected each other, but the user account we will create in the work group is the local user accounts, and the work group does not exhibit much security. Okay, anybody can access the data of others. Okay, this is never going to help in the ID. Okay, then we need a solution which will help us to access all these computers but exhibits more security. Okay, then we need to go with domain. Then let us understand what is domain. Domain means it is a security boundary. Okay, say for example, you have a private property and you have a pool there, and you have some entertainmental aspects are there. Will you simply allow everybody? Say for example, you have a private pool at your farmhouse. Can you allow everybody simply like that? Whoever can comes and use that? No. So there is some conditions will be there. Okay, you will only allow your friends or your relatives or a known person or only the authentic person, right? So this domain means basically it's a security boundary. Okay, it is a security boundary. And if you want to access anything, say for example, this is your organization, you have n number of services here. So if you want to access any service, okay, what you have to do, you have to exhibit or you have to show your authenticity. Means you have to enter your username and passwords. Without entering the username and password, you cannot access anything in the Active Directory, in the domain. Okay, sorry, not Active Directory, in the domain. So now you are, and even though you say for example, you have a computer and this computer will be used by 10 different peoples, I can grant access to this similar computer, the same computer, for 10 different users. And here we have a solution called access based enumeration. Access based enumeration. So by default, this domain environment will exhibit the access based enumeration. That means if you don't have access to that files and folders, even though you can open the D drive, E drive, but you will not see any data. That means that increases the security. Even though if you see the data, if you have not access, if you don't have access to that files and folders, you will not be able to do anything. You cannot even open and see. Maybe the folder content you can see, but not the data which is inside the files and folders. Okay, that increases the security of the estate. Okay, now you are, now you are understood. Okay, domain and the work group differences. So, and work group is a decentralized, but domain is a centralized. Means the users, I told you are 10 users. You will not create that users in the local computer. You will create those users in a central store called Active Directory. Okay, in the Active Directory domain controller server, you will create the users and you will use the same users here to give the access. Okay, now you felt domain is very good, rather compare, I mean by comparing to the work group, right? So now let us understand how can we convert a work group environment into a secured domain environment. Okay, so that is possible by using a service called Active Directory Domain Services. So Active Directory Domain Service, we will also call it as Active Directory Domain Services, means ADDS. Okay, so this is the service. So what you can do, by installing the Active Directory Domain Services to one of your server in the estate, and you can promote that workgroup environment into a secure domain environment. Okay, so now let us go to the slides now. You see here, whatever I have explained to you so far, the same thing I have mentioned here. See here, here you can see the difference between the work group and the domain. Work group, you see there are four computers and all the four computers are interconnected. And this computer can access this one, this one, this one. Similarly, all three can access this one. So no security. And the users are created locally here. Local user, local user, local user, local user. But here if you see, the domain means there is a separate server. This is a box, this is server. Okay, and all the computers are connected to this server. Here we will create the users here, user 1, user 2, and using that user account we can grant access here. Okay, when the user enter the username and password, that authentication will not happen here in the local computer. Rather, it will send a notification to the server, and server will validate whether the entered username is correct or wrong. If the username and password is getting matched, then only it will allow you to log into the server and access the required services. Okay, so work group means it is a peer-to-peer connection of a computer where the computers are interconnected with the network. Okay, but they use local login credentials to access the computer, and they does not exhibit any kind of security. But domain is very good. Domain is very secure because it exhibits the centralized authentication. We create the user account in the domain controller and will grant the access. And one more very important thing is the centralized administration. Say for example, in this four computer, if you want to change a wallpaper for all the computers, you need to manually log into each and every computer and copy the file, set right click and set as desktop wallpaper. But in case of domain, it is not like that. Even if it is 1 lakh computers are there, within 1 minute we can apply all the 1 lakh computers the wallpaper. How that is possible? There is a new solution called the group policies. It is not a new solution, there is a built-in solution actually, that is called as group policy. Using that group policy, you can create the policy and apply to all the computers. Within 1 minute, all the 1 lakh computers in the estate will get the new wallpaper. Okay, so that makes the work easy, that makes the administration easy. Okay, so that is the difference between the work group and the domain. Now let us understand how can you convert a work group into a domain. As I already told you, we can install Active Directory domain services and promote a work group environment into a secured domain environment. Okay, as soon as you install Active Directory domain services in a server, and if you go to the Active Directory console and promote that to a domain controller, your work group will get converted into a domain. Hence, now we will understand what are all the benefits of creating the domain environment. You see here, it provides a centralized authentication. So authentication means what? It is validating, it is checking whether the entered user and the password is correct or not. You see here, you are sitting here, you are an administrator, and all the users and computers are created in this Active Directory server. This is domain controller. Okay, when the user enter the username and password here in the local computers, okay, in their computers, the password will not be verified here, the password will be verified in the Active Directory domain controller, and that is why we call it as centralized authentication. Means even though there is 1 lakh computers are there, all the 1 lakh computers, as soon as anybody enter the username and password to log into the computer, they will send the authentication request to the domain controller, and in the domain controller the authentication will be checked and validated and it will be allowed. That is called as centralized authentication. We create the user accounts in the Active Directory domain controller, and when the user enter the username and password, the authentication will be validated in the domain controller itself, and that is the reason we call it as centralized authentication. Then centralized administration. I was just telling you, if you want to change a wallpaper for in the workgroup environment, you need to go to each and every computer. Imagine there are 100 computers. For one computer, even if it take 4 to 5 minutes, you need to have at least 400 to 500 minutes for completing this work in all the 100 computers. Okay, instead of that, if you have a domain, you can go to Active Directory, go to that particular OU where all the computer objects are stored, create a policy, select the which wallpaper has to go, apply it. Within 1 minute, you will have all the computers the same wallpaper which you want to put. So here you are not logging into each and every computer, but you are just logging into one central server called a domain controller to administer all the remaining users and computers. That is called as centralized administration. And then third one is single sign-on. You might have already seen single sign-on means one sign-in is enough to access all the other applications. If you guys are already working in your organizations, you will see morning when you log into the computer, you will just enter the username and password. After that, whatever applications you open in your internet browser or Google Chrome, automatically the login will happen. Okay, that is called as single sign-on. Why we need to enable single sign-on? Because in order to increase the performance and efficiency, that entering the username and password, sometimes you enter wrong password, the account will get locked out. See, all those issues will be avoided by enabling the single sign-on. And the last one, when you install the Active Directory domain services and configure that computer, that computer will be called as a domain controller. That is why I mentioned here DC. The Active Directory installed computer will never called as a server. We will call it as a server, but the actual name is domain controller or DC. DC means it is domain controller. So these are the couple of benefits. Okay. So now, any questions so far, guys? I'll take questions if you have any.
No, sir.
Okay. Are you guys following me?
Yes,
Sir,
sir.
hello,
Yes,
sir.
sir. Yes, sir.
Sorry?
Sir, Narendra, sir.
Yeah, Narendra.
Sir, Active Directory that manage.
So now you got to know the benefits of Active Directory, right? So as you already know, Active Directory means it's an identity and access management protocol of Microsoft, where you can create the user accounts, create the groups, create the computer object, and granting access to the computer, getting the authentication centralized, and you can administrator all the users and computers by sitting in a single place, a central place. Okay, all these benefits will be there. So as we are starting the Active Directory, it is important to understand couple of components of Active Directory. Okay, because starting from today we are only discussing about the server topic. Another 1 week we will only discuss about the Active Directory. Okay, so I will use many new words, many new things. You should know what it is. So to understand better, let us try to understand the components of Active Directory for now. So there are two types of components in the Active Directory. One is physical component, another one is logical component. Any idea what is physical and what is logical? Can anybody explain me what is physical and what is logical? Okay, fine. So physical component means the components which you can touch and feel. Those are physical components. So you have your laptop in front of you. You can touch and feel it. But we are having a virtual session now. Okay. That you cannot touch and feel, but you can only imagine. Okay, that is belongs to your logic. Okay, maybe in your mind some other picture is coming. Okay, we are sitting here and he's sitting there and we are connected virtually. So logically means it is not, you cannot touch and feel, it is imaginable. So physical means which you can touch and feel, logical means it is imaginable. Okay, that is called as the physical and logical components. So there are four physical components and four logical components in the Active Directory. Okay. The first physical component is the root domain controller. The root domain controller means the very first domain controller. Means, say for example, you have started a new startup company and you have around 10 application servers and around 100 users working in your organization, and to have the all the 100 users and computers controlled, you have created a very first domain controller, okay, in your startup company, and that very first domain controller we call it as root domain controller or RDC. Say for example, your office is there in Bangalore location, and in Bangalore you create a domain controller, and that is called RDC, root domain controller. Then the second component is additional domain controller. So your startup company started and it is going, it's growing like anything. Okay, you are getting good demand for your product, and everywhere every people are talking about the product, and you are getting demand from the outside also. Now you have an office in Bangalore, then you started thinking to create another office in Hyderabad. So in the Hyderabad also you are around 100 users. But when the users, if they use the same domain controller, the RDC, when they enter the username and password, that username and password and all the application transactions will should go to Bangalore location, get the authentication done, again come back to Hyderabad and get the things done. So there is a performance delay. So as soon as they enter the username and password, it will take 1 second or 1.5 seconds to get the authentication. So in IT, every second is important. Okay, so to avoid the delay, what you have decided, you wanted to have one more domain controller in Hyderabad location. Okay, and that domain controller we will call it as ADC, additional domain controller. But same domain only, both are, say for example, your company name is microsoft.com only. Okay, microsoft.com, your company name is microsoft.com. Maybe it is dc01.microsoft.com. This can be dc02.microsoft.com. Okay, all these two are interconnected, both are in synchronization. If you create a user in Hyderabad, the same user will be created in the Bangalore location domain controller also. If you delete somebody in the Bangalore location domain controller, the same will get deleted in the Hyderabad location. The only use is here, when you enter the username and password in Hyderabad location, it will not send the authentication request to the Bangalore location, because there is already a domain controller which is also having the same information. It will get the authentication done there itself. That is called as ADC. So just to balance the load, you are adding an additional domain controller in the same location or in the different location. Okay, that is called as additional domain controller. Just to make you understanding, I am writing two different location, but it is not like that. You should not have a 2 3 domain controller in the same location. I have seen a big organizations in the same location, they have around 15 to 18 domain controllers. When they have lakhs together of users, they should have multiple domain controller. Imagine you have a single domain controller, there are 1 lakh users are working. How much is the delay? Too much delay. And imagine, due to some reason, if that server get crashed, you don't have users at all, your business will be collapsed, your shares will be fallen down like anything, it fell down like anything, fall down like anything. Okay, so that is why we will have high availability by having multiple domain controllers. Okay, the next one is CDC. CDC means it's tail domain controller. So now you have your organization is there in India, okay, or maybe your DC0 is in India. You wanted to build your organization in some other country, maybe UK, US. So in, if you go to the international level, now every country has got their own rules and regulations, and the data compliance policy. Some people will tell you should not transfer the data from one country to another country, and there the local business rules will be different. Here business rules will be different. Okay, so to avoid that, what you have done, you are not adding in another domain controller there as an additional domain controller. Rather, you will create a separate child domain under microsoft.com. Say for example, you will create a new domain that is a child domain called uk.microsoft.com. This is a child domain, and here you will have a domain controller, and the domain controller name would be here dc CDC, say for child domain controller 01 dot uk dot microsoft.com. This is the fully qualified domain name of that CDC 01. Okay, so why do we need child domain controller? Because sometimes the regional restrictions will be there, and you may need to have a separate business. Say for example, if you consider Tata as an organization, okay, Tata has got multiple business and they wanted to segregate each and every business domain separately. Tata Motors is different, Tata Steel is different, Tata Consultants is different, Tata Power is different, Tata Motors is different. Okay, but end of the day, Tata is same. Tata is the main forest or main domain. Under that, you have multiple child domains. Okay, this is what the child domain controller or child domain means. Next one is read only domain controller. So you have one more physical component called read only domain controller. As the name itself is telling, you can only read the content of the domain controller, but you cannot perform any kind of read or write and update operations. Say for example, your business is there in Bangalore, and for the business you get the raw materials from Mangalore via ship. So to control that operations, you have a small office in Mangalore. Okay, here in Mangalore. In Mangalore also you have around 50 users. Okay. Imagine if you use the same domain controller from Bangalore to Mangalore, when the user enter the username and password, same delay will be there, transaction delay will be there, and Mangalore is near sea, right, ocean. So what happens, a lot of rain will come, you have cable cut, blah blah blah, lot of issues will come. So to avoid that, what you wanted to have a small computer placed there, and you need to create a read-only domain controller, so that the authentication, when the user enter the username and password, the authentication will happen in the Mangalore domain controller only. Okay, Mangalore domain controller only. So in this domain controller, you cannot create the user, you cannot create the groups, you cannot grant access, you cannot create the group policy. Whatever things you have done, that will get replicated to here. That's all. Whatever you have added in the RDC or in the Hyderabad, whatever is there, the copy will get created in the Mangalore location. It is just a read only copy. You cannot do any operations, only authentication can be done. Not even account lockout you can do. Okay, only the authentication will be getting done. So you may ask a question, sir, why do we need then RODC? We can have an additional domain controller only. To have the additional domain controller, there are a lot of challenges. You need to have full-fledged license, you need to have bigger hardware, you need to have a data center to keep the computer, I mean a server, and you need to have a person to take care locally, engineer. So additional investment will be there. But if you put a RODC, anybody can manage from there, or you can even manage remotely also. Okay, so there, those are all the challenges with respect to the setup, and that is the reason, according to the requirement, we will create the domain controller. So these four are the physical components we have in the Active Directory. The first one is RDC, the very first domain controller. Second one is ADC, the additional domain controller. We will add to share the workload. CDC is a child domain controller. We will create a small company under the bigger company. Okay, and we wanted to separate the business, and that is the reason this child domain controller will be created. And read-only domain controller, as you know, it is just to read the information, okay, and you cannot do any write operations. So these are all the physical components of an Active Directory. Now let us understand the logical components. So the logical components means there are four logical components. One is forest, tree, domain, and OU. Can anybody tell me what you mean by forest? General term, layman terminology. Okay, what is a domain? A forest.
Collection of
Collection of
a lot of things.
what are those lot of things?
Lot of trees,
Trees,
plants.
animals, species.
Right. So basically, forest means collection of, you said, things. Okay. Say for example, next to my village, there are so many things are there. We have vehicles, we have houses, we have factories, we have little animals. Okay. Can I call it as a forest?
No, sir.
No,
Okay.
no.
Okay. So next to my village, there are so many trees are there, thick trees are there, lengthy trees are there, but no animals, no mountains, no and no rivers. Can that be called as a forest?
No, sir.
No.
Why no?
Because the animal is there, no. Water is there, no. So just only trees is only is mentioned.
Okay, in Mysore there is a zoo, lot of animals will be there but no trees. Can you call that as a forest?
No, sir.
Yes. The basic thing is, to call it as a forest, there should be lot of trees. No matter whether the animals are there, no matter whether the species are there, or rivers are there, or mountains are there. Basically, when we call it as forest, when we have lot of trees, thick trees, okay, then only we call it as a forest. Same goes here also. Forest means it's a collection of trees with a dedicated domain namespace. Okay, that is called as forest. Tree means a group of domains. Say for example, you have trees here. Okay, so so this is a tree. Okay, maybe this tree is a DC01 or DC01.UK. This is UK. This is US. This is Europe. Okay, Western Europe. I'll put it. Okay. So fine. So this is a domain. This is a domain. This is a domain. I mean, UK is a domain. US is a domain. Western Europe is a domain. Say for example. Okay, and all are under forest called Microsoft.com. So here your forest name is Microsoft.com. Okay, and there is a tree called Western Europe, and there is a tree called UK, and there is a tree called US. Okay, these are all the trees. So forest means it's a collection of trees. I said that is the reason I'm calling it a Microsoft.com is a forest. And if you want to look at the trees, the tree is here, UK, US, and Western Europe. And then comes the domain. Okay, and this is a domain, right? This is a domain. UK is a domain, US is a domain, and Western Europe is a domain. Okay, so
Sir, I don't understand. I don't understand clearly trees, sir. What is the trees?
tree means it's collection of trees. Sorry, tree means it's a group of domains. Means if you see here, next picture. Look at here this picture. Here I have a domain called East. See, this domain name is there. This is a separate domain. West is also a separate domain. Okay, and contoso.com is a separate domain. All together we call it as forest contoso.com. See here, contoso.com is a domain because everywhere it is contoso.com, contoso.com, and contoso.com. So here you have three different trees or three different domains All together we will call it as a forest. See, trees and domains both are same. Don't get confused. Okay, trees and domains are both are same. Under a single domain, you have multiple domain controllers. Each and every domain controller can be called as a tree. So all together clubbed, we call it as a domain. Clear?
Sir, I have a one doubt, sir.
Yes.
Actually, you mentioned that just west.constones.com and east.constore.com. That's
Contoso. Yeah.
yes, constone. So these are Amazon.com and Flipkart.com, Justdale.com. These are the
Domains.
domains.
Right.
This is the client,
No,
client
domains.
domains,
Domain. Say for example,
only domain.
consider Microsoft. So Microsoft.com is a forest. If you see, if you start the Microsoft.com for the first time, that will become a domain because it's a single domain, Microsoft.com. But when you create like India.Microsoft.com, UK.Microsoft.com, US.Microsoft.com, Germany.Microsoft.com, Canada.Microsoft.com, then this all countries name I told you, know, those are the domains.
For example, like I can tell you, sir, for one example. Actually, we have to start the one company like this Narendra.com.
Mm.
The Narendra.com is an organization.
That's organization. In the
Is
name
a
of the Narendra.com only you create the first forest. Correct? Huh?
first forest. Yes, sir.
You
It's
start your
Narendra.com.
correct. You start that company in Hyderabad, and that is your
Yes,
very
my
first.
company. Yes, sir. My company is working with the some employees. We create the domain as for example of Reka at the rate of Narendra.com,
Correct.
Chandra at the rate of Narendra.com. Is
Right.
that no?
Right. Those are the usernames. But you start your company in Hyderabad. Now you start in Bangalore and you will start in Pune. So for them, you create a separate domain Pune at the Pune dot Narendra.com. Bangalore.narendra.com. So this
Yes, sir.
Pune
Yes,
and Bangalore is there, no? Those are the trees, are the forests. Sorry, domains. All
domains.
together, Narendra is a forest.
Okay.
Okay. You look at this picture.
Organization is the forest.
Yes, organization name is the forest. Tata is a forest now. Tata has got multiple business. Correct? Now,
Yes, sir.
steel is a domain. So power is a domain. So consultancy is a domain. So correct now? That is what
Yeah. Yes,
the
sir.
domain means. Okay, altogether we call it as forest. Okay, so forest means is a collection of trees with a dedicated domain namespace. The domain namespace here Microsoft.com. I told you why dedicated namespace, because every other trees their names also ends with the same. Like if I say Western Europe dot Microsoft.com, US dot Microsoft.com, everywhere the Microsoft.com is a continuous namespace is coming, same name is coming. Okay, and that is called as forest. Tree means is group of domains with a dedicated namespace. Okay, and domain means it's a security boundary. I already told you domain means you need to enter the username and password. It's a kind of boundary line, compounded line. You need to get in means you need to enter the username and password. Then the OU means it's an organization unit. Okay, every company has got multiple department under Microsoft.com. Okay, there is a sales department, there is a IT department, there is a admin department. So these are the OUs. What I will do, I'll keep all the sales users under the sales OU. I'll keep all the IT users under the IT OU. I'll keep all the administration department users in the admin OU. So this OU is nothing but a container or a folder to segregate the users and computers based on its some certain category. If either it is a department or it is a type or it is a service type or whatever it is, or computer type or whatever it is, or region wise, that is also fine. So this is called as OU. So OU means it is the folder structure or a container in the Active Directory to store the classes and attributes. The classes and attributes means either your username or your computer or objects, whatever it is. Okay, that is called as the organization unit. So these are the physical and logical components of the Active Directory available, I mean there in the Active Directory. This example I've already given you. Here forest is a contoso.com, and you can see two trees here, east.contoso.com, west.contoso.com. Okay, all together this tree all together contoso as a forest. Okay, if you ask me what is the domain, only east. What is the domain? West. Okay, there are two domains, east and west. Okay, so altogether this complete structure we call it as the forest. And OU means, OU means it's a folder structure, okay, where you can store your classes and attributes. Classes means it is your username. Attribute means the properties of it. Like if you take your username as Narendra, you have your first name, last name, okay, and your mobile number, all those things are the attributes. So this is the AD structure. So what we will do, we will just stop it here, and tomorrow onwards we will just continue with the, we'll try to understand how the Active Directory partitions will be there, how the Active Directory database will be there, how we will store the where and what data will be stored in what of the partitions. All those things can be discussed tomorrow. With that, I will stop the recording and then I'll take the questions. Thank you.
Sir.